The school of Zen teaching that I was trained in is called, in Japanese, Nyorai Zen. And Nyorai is the Japanese word for a Sanskrit term, tathagata. Tathagata. And this is the word that the historical Buddha Shakyamuni used when he referred to himself. Siddhartha Gautama, after his awakening, was called many things: the world-honored one, the great doctor, the Buddha. And when he referred to himself, he called himself Tathagata. And this word has as its content two separate words. One is tathagata, and one is tathagata. All this is Sanskrit to me. Tathagata means thus coming, and tathagata means thus going. And so when he referred to himself, he said, the one who is thus coming, the one who is thus going. And the reason that I'm taking the time to talk about all of this is because this single teaching of these two simultaneous activities lies at the very core of the practice of Zen. Fundamentally, all of us look at this world and look at the people in it and the objects in it. And we look at ourselves. We look at our situations. We look at our relationships. And in each and every place that we look, we see an object. We see a thing. And our whole worldview about everything is that this is a great cosmos made up of objects. And this foundational teaching, the most basic teaching of Zen Buddhism, is that by taking up this perspective of the world being made up of solid objects, we're making a tremendous mistake. A mistake that's so big, in fact, that it it ensures, it utterly guarantees that you will suffer. Because when we sign up for that, when we ascribe to this idea that this is a universe that's full of static, separate objects, we're signing up for something which is just not true. This teaching of two fundamental, simultaneous and mutually opposing activities, which in Sanskrit is tathagata, tathagata, thus coming and thus going. It's been expressed in many different ways throughout time. We can talk about it as the activity of birth, the activity of death, the activity of arising, the activity of dissolving. One of my teachers said, the activity of plus and the activity of minus. And we can characterize it any way that we like, as long as we get the idea that there are these two simultaneously acting, opposing activities that make up everything in this cosmos. Zen Buddhism isn't a matter of faith. I've just sort of laid out a real fundamental principle in this teaching, and I don't ask you to believe that. What I ask people to do, and what we focus on doing here in Zen practice, is first of all developing the capacity to investigate deeply. So we start with this simple practice of sitting and breathing, being able to come fully into this unfolding activity of our lives so that we're able to be here. We're able to be awake and aware of what's taking place right under our noses. We're able to do this in stillness and in activity. And then we begin to look at things. And so we take, first of all, the most solid, real, separate, distinct, tangible thing that we can come across, which is ourselves. We walk through our lives talking about ourselves. We walk through our lives taking care of ourselves, improving ourselves, acquiring more for ourselves. And then we have to sort of deconstruct that. We have to say, so what is this thing that I call a self? Certainly, if there are objects in this cosmos, then the self is one of them. And so I should be able to find it. So we begin to investigate. Is myself my thoughts? Well, certainly it can't be thoughts, because from one moment to the next, my thinking changes. The thoughts that I had yesterday or an hour ago or when I was a child are not the thoughts that I have today. What about feelings? Well, certainly my feelings change as rapidly, if not more so, than my thoughts. So there is no self to be found in my feelings either. We can't find self in beliefs. The things that I believed when I was a child are not the things that I believe today. Even our very physical structures, I'm told, every 7 years, every last bit of this skin bag that I call myself is different. It's new. It's not the same. Every situation that I walk into, every relationship that I have, every moment of every life, of every breath that I take has never happened before, will never happen again. This thing that I call a self is not a thing at all. It is a dynamic interaction between these two simultaneous activities, plus and minus, tathagata, tathagata, simultaneously becoming and dissolving, simultaneously being born and dying in each and every moment. This realization, this penetration, this awakening is of crucial importance in Zen practice. Our perspective on this cosmos transforms when we're able to actually grasp this, because the world changes from this collection of distinct and separate objects that randomly bump into one another into a seamless, unified, dynamic, unfolding activity. The world changes from blocks into fluidity. In the classical scriptures, a student who realizes this has this first awakening. this first awakening to this dynamic activity of plus and minus, of birth and death, this person is called a stream entrant. And this is a beautiful metaphor because it represents us taking this step off of the solidity, off of this world of objects, the bank, and entering into the stream, entering into the flow, the river, the activity. We begin to see that things aren't so distinct. That when we're interacting with people, where before we might have taken them as completely unrelated, completely separate, outside of us, when we begin to truly grasp that there is indeed no us to be outside of, that in relationship, in interaction, each and every one of us is united. We are one. Each and every object, each and every mountain, each and every river, each and every star, and each and every planet, and each and every galaxy, all of this is this singular, unblemished fabric, intimately connected, endlessly dynamic, and eternally unfolding. So, this practice on Tuesdays, I'm often talking very nuts and bolts. How do you sit? How do we pay attention to our posture? How do we go about dealing with our in-laws? Very practical stuff. But as we practice, we can't forget that all of these things arise out of this single realization, not separate. And this realization isn't a concept. It's not something that we can just grasp with our head and that's going to change everything. No. Through our own experience, through our own practice, through our own just watching, being awake and witnessing the unfolding activity of this cosmos through our lives, in these activities, sitting and walking and chanting, we can witness, we can experience, we can know for ourselves this activity of unifying with, becoming one with, dissolving away into our environment, our activity, relationship. And we can know, we can experience this activity of arising, becoming distinct, recognizing. And we can witness this activity over and over and over again. We'll see it in our practice here. We'll see it from moment to moment as we sit. We'll see it as we engage in walking meditation. We'll feel it as we chant. And as we continue to practice, we'll begin to recognize it as we make our music and as we clean our floors and as we embrace our partners and our children. And this practice, this experience, this teaching of tathagata, tathagata, thus coming and thus going, moves out of the realm of concept, of ideas. and it becomes the experiential teaching that the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, is.